Welcome to Pocket Watch Podcast. I'm Zach,
Cruz,
Jake,
and we're fucking Pocket Watch Podcast.
Yes, sir. Laugh at us or learn with us. We're here to grow.
And growing, we're fucking doing, man. Welcome to Pocket Watch Podcast.
Woo! That's right. Yo, shout out to Melissa. We're not repeating the intro anymore. We're trying to figure it out. Welcome to Pocket. You didn't even come in like welcome to Pocket Watch Pod. You had your you didn't put your DJ voice on. It's all right. We'll
Honestly, I missed it. I didn't even do anything. I was just like,
it's all right, man.
I was vibing, bro.
Yo, thank you guys for listening another week. We fuck with y'all. Don't make sure you like,
follow,
share,
subscribe,
comment,
mention.
Just do something with the content you're watching. We appreciate you guys so much, man. We're growing at a rate that we love at this point. We're adding some shit that we're, after this episode, we're putting the logo up in the back. It's going to be, man, we appreciate you guys, man. You give us motivation all the time. We got a good episode for y'all today. Today, guys, I want to get a little bit.
You know what we should do? We should just make like a little topic jar and write a bunch of topics on like little popsicle sticks and put them in a jar and just pull
and then
them
grab
out.
one and see what we're going to talk about.
You want to make this a more gay podcast than it already is?
Nah, you know what? He's
Is that your goal?
You're good.
No, but I just figured that'd be cool for us to have like if we ever wanted to. Just
Well, like we said, look, if we want, I've never said no to any topics you guys want to talk
he never
about.
said no to nothing.
I never say no. Like, we could talk about whatever y'all want to talk about, but y'all don't ever want to talk about shit. So
I'm here now, though.
no, I'm just playing. Y'all, I love y'all. Y'all don't give me no shit. But we got a good episode today. All right, today's episode. All right, because this is a growth podcast. This is like three dudes shooting the shit. You know what I mean? Whatever.
Three dudes shooting shit is not.
Three dudes in one tap.
Just,
Three dudes, one shooting shit. No good.
no, but today, and I don't even want to say this is conspiracy, man. This is not conspiracy. Like, at this point, it's really funny how, so like, and I've argued with Christina about different things in relation to, but I love this era of information. Like, I love that everybody's a Google search away from finding out some shit. Right?
But the problem is that nobody even fucking utilizes it to their advantage, bro.
Well, the problem is that access to information is also countered with social media, where motherfuckers are putting out whatever, however, any, you know what I mean? So it's like the two things happened at the same time, and they happen to be like countering each other. Where it's like you have to research everything that you see now because you can't trust shit because it's probably for views or likes or engagement. But also, it's there. You can do more research now than you ever fucking could, right? Like, it's ridiculous.
And part of the problem now that we're starting to see, too, is that a lot of the research we're starting to see, like, if you use Google, depending on what you're looking up, it can be really biased.
And you got to start being a little smarter with how you research, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, the pro is back in the day, motherfuckers used to have to, like, go to a library and request documents, request access, do shit
get,
like that.
Encyclopedias.
Yeah, like, it was so hard to be educated in certain things that they don't teach in public school systems, college, whatever the case is. Now, like, for real, you really just got to check the source.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and even then, it's like, depending on the source, you take it with a different weight, and then you check a different source, whatever. Like, you could be as informed as you want to be. If you don't want to, then you don't have to. You know what I mean? But I say that to say, and then the other part is, I also love it because with all that, I love how Netflix has been putting out their documentaries, right? So, like, they got, the Michael Jordan one, Last Dance.
Oh, okay.
Right, like they got some good ones out there, right? But when I'm talking about documentaries, is like if you see Netflix put out a documentary about something specific, they are out there to expose.
Yeah,
like they can't wait to expose, right? Like some of the examples were like, that priest or I forgot who it was. No, the doctor that was inseminating girls with his own semen and stuff like that.
Yeah,
he ended
that
up
was
having
crazy.
all these kids. Like, I love those. And then they had a couple others where the point was like to expose something that was happening. You know, like
Waco. They did the Waco one.
yeah, they did the Waco one. Like, it was really cool, and I love how they capture it or whatever. Another one that they've done, and also in relation to the access to information that we have these days and how we've always perceived things in the past and like up until like these days, it's kind of crazy, like the life we're living. But there's a documentary on Netflix called Ancient Civilization, and it's the guy, the main guy. They do very well putting together, by the way. It's not so much like a documentary. It kind of looks like a Animal Planet type episode or whatever. But what it is there's this guy that did all types of research and has been doing research for years about how he doesn't believe what we know today about our history is true, right? Meaning, like, when you think about 10,000 BC, 1,000 BC, whatever the case is, like way back then, we think of hunter-gatherers, we think of like sharps, spears and shit like that, right?
Yeah.
And shit that's been really trending is the pyramid shit too, right? Like, how the fuck could you make these pyramids with this precision and stuff when they're using like fucking like old like tools that are worse than what's in my garage right now, right? And part of that thing, like the part of what the pyramids going viral for that reason is also because we're getting smarter and smarter as a civilization, where they can prove how some of those theories are wrong now, right? So like our history is based off of historians and archaeologists, right? Which up until these days, that's fine, right? Like people that are very specialized in aging dirt, fossils, shit like that, and then historians who are people that keep up on the written history and stuff like that. Like up until now, like that's been okay. The problem is with the access to information we have now and the different opinions and valid sources, people are poking holes in historian stories, right? But also there's engineers and like specialists, like industrial engineers and shit, looking into these claims or theories that archaeologists are putting out about our history, right? So, for example, like let's just say 1960s, right? A, the average person doesn't have access to all this crazy information. B, even like engineering wise and whatnot, like we weren't as advanced as we are today, right? So when we looked at the pyramids and stuff, we just thought it just took time. Like that took a long time. They used shivs and stuff like that, whatever. These days you got engineers and stuff looking at how they're building the pyramids, and they're putting like real like one of the guys was saying like we can't build that today, like, and if we could, it would take us so long with our current technology, right? So he was like, let alone if we had to use shivs and all these weird tools and stuff. He's like no fucking way. Like engineers, right? Like we were taking history from archaeologists who are just like they're fossil people.
Yeah.
And they're trying to tell us that people built these pyramids with shivs and shit. And it's like, who are you to tell me the physics of what it takes to build that precision on these pyramids, right? Like, to put in perspective, there's like pieces on the very top of the pyramid that is so precise, and the weight of that, I forgot what they call it. They're like big blocks. I forgot how they call them, but these big blocks that they're using weigh like 16 semi trucks.
Yeah.
And it's like when we use cranes and industrial and all this shit, it's like we couldn't even achieve that precision today, let alone what we thought they were doing, like pushing it up or leverage
Or
things
elephants or shit like
fuck
that.
no. So, and the thing is, the problem with it right now is like that is not what happened, but they can't say what did happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, like, whatever traction it could have gotten, it's not getting, because it's also like, I'm not telling you what happened. I'm just saying that did not happen. Like, that is not how these things were built. Like, I'm telling you right now, go ahead and try. And yeah, we're all bougie and we're a different society these days, but I don't care. We have better tools and we can do that with our tools today. and these are engineers and shit. So, they have this documentary got put out, and this guy is one of those guys that keeps digging and digging on research, and he keeps talking to like engineers and all these different like specialists in the field to try to give their opinion. But the thing is there's a society of historians and archaeologists that don't want that information out. Like they want,
But
like,
why not?
they are invested. There's a couple theories why, but for the most part, they're invested in what they put out is our history, and they don't want to keep going, like keep digging into it. Like, no, this is what it is, and part of it is because that's the only like real solution or theory we have out there, and they don't want to revise a bunch of shit. Like they got a whole industry going based off this. You know what I mean? Like if you think about the business side of history and historians and archaeologists and stuff like that, like you're hitting their credibility, and you're kind of like messing with people believing in that society and what is going on or whatever.
The thing is, though, another thing that's kind of interesting is the pyramids are built almost identical in different locations too.
Yes.
There's
So
multiple locations.
That's the weird part too.
if you haven't watched it, watch Ancient Civilization on Netflix. It is hosted by this guy who is one of those guys that keeps digging, and he has been shunned for 20 or so years by historians and archaeologists, saying that this guy's a pseudoscientist, this guy's fake, whatever, right?
Is he claiming it's like aliens or something?
No. So, and what I love about the documentary is he doesn't claim it's anything. He just disproves what we think it is.
Okay.
And he clearly disproves it. That's the thing. Like, it is so obviously disproved of what we have thought up to today, how our civilizations before us.
And he has no theory of what it is.
No, he's like, but his argument in the documentary is, why is nobody looking into this? Like, why are we like satisfied with this, and we're just believing in this?
People don't. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't believe it, but you know.
But like, why can't people look into it? Like, if you're a historian, archaeologist, whatever the case is, why can't we focus those? Why can't we keep coming up with more accurate information instead of being okay with the theory provided, and now you're worried about us questioning your next theory?
My thing with it is like, sometimes we're not meant to know everything, and you can't find out everything. The truth cannot always be found for everything. You know what I mean?
No.
It's like you don't always have to know the truth about everything, and it's great that it's disproving it, but maybe we just will never fucking know how it was done, and there's no way for us to fucking know.
The other argument is one documentary gave me more knowledge than I've ever had about our past civilizations.
Yeah.
Why can't these societies do the same? Why can't we put this effort, right? Like, there's people putting mad effort. Like, I don't know what the pay is or whatever for historians or archaeologists, but like, what the fuck are you doing if you're not trying to figure that out? Like, cool. Like, if you're done with progress on this story, like on what our history is, then like go get another job.
That's a life dream.
Like, what is your purpose in our economy if we're not trying to figure that out? Just like there's people trying to figure out space travel and shit. Just like there's people trying to discover shit in the ocean or whatever. Cool. Like, we want to learn new shit. My thing with the ancient civilization, or what we perceive as the people before us that I like, is yes or no. In school and up to this point, we always perceive the people before us in like 10,000 BC, whatever. And that's the other theory why he gets shut out, is religion, because he's making a lot of that
the basis to
look
why he
weird,
believes.
and
Is he
it
trying to
doesn't
disprove
challenge
it,
me.
or no?
No, it's just so
goes
like,
against
a lot of the stories and religions also are based off of it's through the perception of what our historians and archaeologists have told us. Like, we always see like Jesus, whatever the case is, they're all hunter gatherers, sheep herders. You know what I mean? Like, but the other, he relates in that documentary on how all of our religious stories are similar and why. And it's based off our actual history, which is what I fucking love, right? So he talks about in that documentary how he believes that his theory that he does give is like, A, he's disproving what we think, but B, his theory that he gives is the civilizations before us were not a bunch of dummies and hunter-gatherers. Like, just like today, and a great analogy he gave was, just like today, we have our civilization right now, right? There are hunter-gatherers alive. There are societies and parts of countries that are still living that hunter-gatherer society.
Yeah.
So he was like, not that they didn't exist. That's what archaeologists found. You know, like that's what their research found. He's just saying that there was smarter people in their civilization amongst them. And he said this explains the pyramids a little bit better. And he went all around the world.
When were the pyramids supposedly built?
So all different times. All different times, right? But there's a set of pyramids around the world that date back before our most recent cataclysm, which is like apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
So dating, I think it's like 10,000 BC was our last apocalypse where... BC. So there was huge... there was a big ice age for a long time, right? And his theory is that this ancient civilization lived through the ice age. They were smart enough to handle the ice age, and they lit like that was like a couple thousand years of ice age, right? But when that started to turn, when the ice age started to reverse, there was huge tsunamis, and that's what wiped out the ancient civilization, except for a few people, right? His theory is there's a couple people from each of these civilizations, not a couple, let's call it like 500 to 1,000 of these ancient civilizations that survived those tsunamis. And they came into contact with the other civilizations either before or after, you know what I mean? Like that survived the tsunamis, but were not as advanced as these people. And it's happened all around the world, and they all correlate to a lot of our religions, where this prophet comes and he knows how to do shit that we've never seen, right? And it's all perspective based. So they know how to build, they know how to do, you know, they're teaching how to farm, like shit like that, right? And every religion has a great flood also in it. And it's really interesting the way he explained it. I'm explaining it terribly right now, but his theory is that there was an ancient civilization before the ancient apocalypse. Some of the pyramids were built before that. Some of them survived through the ice age, or they survived through the ice age. Some of them survived through the flood, the Great Flood, when all that ice melts. To put it in perspective, Antarctica iced over all the way to like Oklahoma of the United States. Like that's how far Antarctica was able to grow during the ice age. So imagine all that melting, huge floods. He visits a lot of sites in like Utah, like all these places where he doesn't believe they were man-made, and he's got like experts talking about how like, no, this was forced, like this was part of the Great Flood and shit like that.
But wouldn't water melting decrease instead of increase?
No. So the other part, so during the ice age, right, this is the interesting shit. So like, and they have ways of calculating it, right? So like, we know what sea level is right now on different places. Even we know this where we are on sea level on this ground we're standing right now. But based on the amount of ice that melted or whatever, like they could calculate where the sea level was during the ice age. So imagine all the water we have right now. Like Antarctica is not at Oklahoma right now, right? So because where we are right now, sea level risen. So when during the ice age, sea level goes down and ice increases, right? So shit that is underwater right now was actually above water during the ice age.
Yeah.
And they could calculate meters down and what they have discovered in the you know, how deep is this ocean, you know, on this planet? Oh, sea level was below that. That means that was above water, you know, and shit like that. To the point where like one of the episodes talks about the lost city of Atlantis, right? And nobody knows shit about the lost city of Atlantis, but they know that it looks like roads were built. And maybe we're only seeing the parts that were exposed. You know what I mean? And honestly, things that are underwater right now got hit the hardest during the Great Flood and shit like that. But yeah, during the ice age, water levels were way low.
Yeah, ice
was way out. And then when that all melts, just imagine the amount of flooding that we've never seen.
Yeah.
All at once.
How I was just looking at it, like we have so much land mass available right now, so why didn't they just move? Because that process would have been a slow process.
Yeah, and
like hundreds of years process.
Yeah, and and here's the other thing. Just because they weren't what we think they were doesn't mean they were what we are now.
Considering they were so intelligent to be able to build these pyramids and all this shit, that they weren't able to be like, huh, that's weird. 5 years ago, the water wasn't touching my fucking house, but now it's touching my fucking house. You know what I mean? And they weren't able to comprehend, get the fuck out of there.
So the other thing is...
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
in a sense.
And that explains why a percentage survived and some didn't, because also it's not like a slow flood. You got to think of like tsunamis.
Yeah, tsunamis happen whenever like big chunks break off.
And they didn't have cars, right? Like,
No,
we don't
of
know,
course.
like, just even, and that's the other thing. So, like, Joe Rogan's podcast, he had 2 of the specialists on that documentary on his podcast, and those guys talked about how they believe the ancient civilization had a, and this is the civilization that existed before the big apocalypse, had a different understanding of things we don't use today, right? So, like, you talk about the industrial age for our society when we started building shit, right? And that's all based off of combustion, gasoline, like shit like that, right? And because that worked so well, we kept innovating in that direction, and we kind of ignored other avenues of doing things. And what he was saying was, just because they probably didn't have cars and shit like that, right? Because that's the age of the industrial age, innovated into that. Combustion, gasoline, that shit innovated into that. He thinks that they had a way better understanding than we do on frequency. And his example that he gave, which was brilliant, was like, think of like clippers or something like that, or a phone, right? If you're an ant, you can't move that, right? But when it vibrates, it has a certain frequency in it, and it moves by itself. And if anything, it can be mobile enough where you could move it.
Yeah.
If you put a certain amount of frequency into it. And that's an avenue we never explored, we never innovated in, but he thinks that they were very good at.
I could see that, because when I was in Italy, they were like really good at like building things and understanding sound. And for an example, is we were at like in the forums in Palatine Hill area. And then if you ever go there, there's like when you kind of go up a little bit and over to like the backside, there's like a big, I don't know how to explain it. It's like a big area. It looks like almost like an entertainment hall kind of type of thing. And it's this big, it's outdoors. They have like so much shit trying to hold it together, I guess because of like earthquakes. But I was over there and I told Melissa, and I was like, this is pretty cool, because you look at this almost looks like a place that people would gather for like an announcement or to like talk or something like that. And I was talking to her about it, and I was like, I wonder if it's really good at amplifying voice. So I screamed or something like that. I don't know, I was like, or something like that. And bro, it was so fucking loud. And then it's like I even tried like just like talking with like if you were giving like an announcement like with your voice, that shit like amplified so much. And it was just like something basic. But there's like a lot of different places. Like I forgot where exactly we were at. I think they were saying, I forgot exactly where it was, but there were certain areas that they were saying that it was built to specifically be able to amplify sound, and the way that everything was structured was to amplify sound and everything like that.
So
yeah, and that, I'm going to touch up on that real quick, because I did read an article back in the day. I wanted to pull it up now. Just
The Dr. Rife machine to kill cancer?
Yes, because if we're talking about frequency, that was all it was based on. Was he basically thought that if we basically give enough frequency to the amount of the cancer, because cancer has its own frequency, people don't notice that. It actually does studies that it has its own frequency. He thought by matching the frequencies that you can kill it, essentially. Yeah. Obviously, there's no evidence or proof, because I don't know if it's going to be...
No, it was really big. So this was actually, I learned about this when I was in school. I learned about this when I was in my with one of my teachers that I had. She talked about it, and I actually talked about it in the podcast too before, but I didn't like get too deep into it. But Dr. Rife was a guy, like he was saying, that was able to find certain frequencies would kill certain cancer cells.
Yeah,
and he had extremely high success rates. And then back then, he actually went to, if I'm not mistaken, it's either Switzerland or Germany or something like that, and he shadowed it like kind of like an apprentice / shadowed a guy that was over there that had like a crazy microscope. And it was like basically like microscopes that we have nowadays, but back then like they didn't exist like that. There was only like 1 or 2 in the whole world. And he went over there and like shadowed him and stuff like that, and eventually he was able to build his own. And then he came back over and was doing his study and stuff like that, and he was doing everything, and he was killing it, man. He was having extremely high success rates, cured a lot of people of like really bad cancers. And this, at the time, chemotherapy was coming out.
Yeah.
This chemotherapy was becoming a thing at the time, and basically he was kind of coming out with this stuff, and he started getting like a lot of threats.
Yeah.
Basically like, hey, stop what you're doing. This is not good. Blah blah. Like people started breaking into his business and smashing stuff like that. But then it got really, really bad. Like whenever he had like a really big breakthrough, it kind of went like really public with it, and they got a lot of traction. Basically, somebody broke into his lab and destroyed all of his stuff. They destroyed his microscope that he had, and that's like what he needed to be able to like prove his work.
Ain't that some shit?
Yeah, and they destroyed his whole lab, and then also
shredding the shit out of him too.
And then also the government went in and then confiscated all of his paperwork, all of his lab results, all of his case studies, all of everything that he had was taken from him by the government. And basically he just stopped doing it because he didn't have the means to be able to build back up, and it just kind of crushed him. But yeah,
so
Dr. Rife, R-I-F-E.
So
yeah.
all there's that.
Oh, hold on. So sorry to add to that. There's actually a couple people in Canada that are actually starting to do his study again with like the frequencies.
Great.
And they're actually,
hell yeah.
And from what I told my mom about when I learned about it, and my mom said that they actually use frequency machines to actually sanitize hospitals. My mom was saying that like there's like a lot of high end hospitals will actually put frequencies and machines in rooms, and it will help sterilize the area.
So
it's crazy.
So in the Joe Rogan podcast, that guy was talking about moving shit like in a separate world, but still. So like that study, all those things show the applicableness of using frequency. Like to us, it sounds like we're talking about some weird shit, right? Like what frequency, motherfucker? Are you talking about like radio signals or something? Whatever. But still, that shows how applicable frequency can be.
That's on a
granular level.
That's also what I talked about.
Deeper, though.
That's what I talked about too when I was talking about with when we had Jazz on, Jasmine. When I talked about how
FDA,
how the guy was speaking and the crystals were forming and everything like that.
Yeah.
With the guy, whatever, Hisaru, whatever his name was.
Energy.
No, that's frequencies.
You're right.
It's frequencies. Your voice carries frequencies. That's what they're saying. Like a lot of that comes from is the frequency of your voice, the frequency of the words that you speak and how it travels.
There was one I was another, not to get off topic, another topic in regards to frequency. I read an article that the actual the government put out. You can look it up. It's the government. They put it out. A whole case study they did on regards to kind of like parallel traveling, like a different universe type of traveling in a sense. And they wanted to kind of see if it was realistic. So what they did was they did something where they get the frequency to a certain measure, to a certain way. Like it mimicked your hum, almost like a humming noise. It mimicked that in everybody's body. And certain people, and this is from the study itself, and I'll pull it up and we can actually go over it later. They were actually stating that they were having these outer body experiences, like on some different, like real true, like experiences. They were able to see this. They were able to vision this and view it and see it in a sense. And it's deeper than what I'm telling you now, and I'm gonna give you more of a better understanding later. But it's something you would want to look into, bro, because it made you think like to a different level. Like monks, they go to these towers for days at a time, and they're at these peaceful states, and they usually have their eyes closed. Everyone thinks they're just there. Who even knows if they're even in their body in that moment? They actually achieve that sense of like, pure spiritual, whatever it is, that achieve the actual frequency to leave and join. If the whole world's frequency and we are frequency, your frequency, and our frequency, that's not impossible.
Well, the other thing is like, look, even poke holes in what you're saying or whatever. At the baseline, we have a minimal understanding of frequency, and we're talking about vibrations. We're talking about the pushing of something you can't see type thing or whatever. It's very interesting that like with our limited understanding, how you can still find these very applicable examples and stuff. But what I wanted to say was tying it back to that pyramid shit was, so just like the Rife scientist or whatever the case is was getting pressures by all these other people not to come out with that shit because of money reasons. The guy on the Joe Rogan podcast was explaining frequency on how to move objects and shit, because he's trying to explain pyramids and these big hieroglyphic structures. That's what it's called, hieroglyphic structures with these big mass hieroglyphs. They're trying to come up with theories to explain that. His theory is frequency. He has been studying that for 5 years. He has not been able to speak about it in public up until this year. And it mainly is because those that are, so like if you think about these big car companies that are making money off the mechanics of combustion, and you're rearranging everything take that, the oil people that are, there's big money in oil, you know what I mean, and fucking combustion mechanics and stuff like that. They don't want that shit out there because you are taking their competitive advantage away. Like, they would have to totally redesign so much, and it puts them at a certain like, they're used to making it making money. Like, you're talking about Toyotas, Honda, whatever the case is. Those motherfuckers, just like those, like, chemos coming out at the same time this guy's theories coming out, put that shit out because it's a thing, man. Like, that's a big thing. And that guy was talking about how he hasn't been able to talk about it, and he still couldn't say some things because of that.
Yeah.
And they're trying to keep him down for those same reasons.
The only thing I want to add to that is that vibrations and sand is a horrible combination because that creates quicksand.
No, but...
And a lot of them are out in deserts.
Some are in Egypt, right?
Yeah.
But we don't understand what they were doing with frequency, right? Like, from what our understanding... Right, like frequency with sand doesn't work, whatever. But part of that documentary was talking about how some of these pyramids, like the most perfectly built pyramids, are dated before that ancient apocalypse, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a lot more pyramids and hieroglyphic structures or whatever built after, but they are not as precise as the ones before, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, still way back in the day, still BC, but not 10,000 BC. But those built 10,000 before 10,000 BC, like a lot of the Egyptian pyramids and stuff, way more precise than the ones built after. And that goes to that theory where some of those people from that civilization survived the big flood and tried to teach people to the best that they could, enough to where they could do shit that we still can't do, but it wasn't the same, right, as like the whole society. How... Like, even in that documentary, or there's a YouTube channel that was talking about in the pyramid at the very top, right, there's these hallways, and it was really the only way they could move shit up there, right? But it was halfway finished, and there were this, like I said, 16 semi-truck weight, in tons, hieroglyphic blocks that were placed perfectly, right? I think it was like 6 of them, right? But there was like 4 placed perfectly. 2 of them were left in the hallway, right? 2 of them were not. It wasn't done yet internally. And it was the perfect example of how the fuck did they do this? Because imagine 16 semi-truck weight, right? But the hallway, this block is so big that on the width of the hallway, I think it was like just under a foot on each side of, like, that's how much space they had to work with. So realistically, they would have had to push and pull from our understanding of how they built it, right? And he put it into perspective. He was like, let's just say the average man could move like 250 kgs, right? Which, like, we would have a really fucking hard time doing that, right? I don't even know what 250 kgs is.
I think it's like 400 pounds, no?
Right.
Yeah, we ain't moving that by ourselves.
250 kilograms and pounds.
But yeah.
Oh, my phone's in fucking airplane mode because I'm recording.
Anyways,
I want to know.
It's more pounds.
Yeah,
Kilograms?
250 kilograms and pounds. We're Americans. This is how you know we're American.
But he, like, from his calculations, let's just say we could do 250 kgs per person. I think he was saying
551 pounds.
Okay, let's just say he was like, I'll be conservative. Let's just say every person can move 551 pounds, right?
Yeah.
He was like, you wouldn't.
But that's pushing or pulling.
Pushing and pulling. Let's just say you could push and pull 500 kgs, right? Or 500 pounds, 250 kgs.
Okay.
He was like, you would have needed roughly like 300 people in this hallway. And not only that, tell me how 300 people could get the same, like, with this surface area, that amount of pressure, right? Like, you could put 250 people in that hallway to move it and pull it. You're only really getting 50 people maybe on both ends, pulling and pushing. The rest are just pushing each other. You know what I mean? And you're telling me they get that precise of a build and, like, angle and shit like that, if that's the way that they were moving shit? That example showed me how that frequency theory is the best. Because imagine if you could just, however they were doing it, vibrate it all the way through these hallways up, and then they could like move it and pick, like
That can make some logical sense, yeah.
bro, like that
It's
shit.
either that or aliens.
And then there's the aliens.
I'm sorry, I'm not checking, but
Yeah.
either that or aliens.
So his theory is against aliens. His theory is the civilization
frequency
built it. We had and maybe it's not frequency, but he was just saying like the civilization that came before us were not a bunch of dummies and hunter gatherers. They were fucking like advanced.
There's also been like evidence on giants existing.
Yeah, that's
that
another
too.
theory.
And they've actually found like some
Skulls and shit.
They found some bones and stuff like that of it. And if that's the fucking case, then it's like, okay.
That makes it more feasible.
Then it's like, okay, if you have fucking 20 of those giants in there.
Or 100.
Yeah. Even if I had 100.
The whole thing together. The only crazy part about that is like, so like the ones in Egypt are the most precise.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a couple other ones. Because he went all around the world. He didn't even do Egypt in that documentary.
Yeah.
He went all around the world. He didn't even do Egypt. But the pyramids in Egypt are the most precise.
Something I want to add to the preciseness too. When it says precise, you mean what? Like in terms of like how flush everything is?
Yeah, and the way that you have to build.
Erosion can also make that super flush too over time.
Can it?
Yeah, erosion of stone for 10,000 plus years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know how much rain is in the desert, but if it was to the point where flooding happened, stuff like that,
yeah.
If it eroded it, it could have made it a lot smoother than what it was back in the day.
So the thing against that is not in that documentary, but this guy that I subscribe to YouTube. I don't even know what the fuck his name is, but he was on a couple podcasts. He's the pyramid guy or whatever. But his theory is like the ancient Egyptians that we know of today. He thinks they inherited the pyramids and everything that was there. Like they did not build it; they inherited it, and then they put all of their culture and stuff within it and renovated. So within the pyramids, there's proof of renovation.
Yeah,
in the pyramids, right? And then, but the biggest indicator of that is the Sphinx, right? So he was talking about the amount of erosion and wear and tear on the body of the Sphinx out is so much more, and like it's like built out, and mind you, we dug this up, right? Like not too long ago. I don't know how long ago, but it was recently dug up. Like it didn't just the Sphinx, like it was like buried where like part of the head was out, like in our time, our generation. You know what I mean? So the biggest argument to what he was talking about with the ancient civilization was the sphere, the circle built around the Sphinx. The body of the Sphinx has so much more wear and tear, and like water, like what you would see on rocks on a waterfall that just has constant penetration, from the water. He was like the Sahara back in 10 BC and shit was before the Ice Age was actually like a tropical like fucking rainforest and shit, right? So he was saying that's what part of what dates it back to that time, and he says it way better than I do, and they have more science to it. But the face, the head and the face does not have that same wear and tear or erosion, right? So and if you look at the Sphinx, the head is so much smaller, like in compared proportion to the body, that they truly think, and the precision of how they carved the head is not at all as well as the pyramid or the things built around it, where they think the ancient Egyptians did the head. And when they found it, it was like a lion. And if you think about what the head of the Sphinx looks like, that's ancient Egyptian culture right there. And a lot of this shit drawn all over the walls and the renovations within the pyramid is ancient Egyptian culture. And he was like, this just proves perfectly that the ancient Egyptians inherited these pyramids and they put their
shit into it.
Right?
That would make complete sense. That would make complete sense that maybe it was there for millions of years and they just happened to stumble upon it and then they just put their own stuff over
it. And it could be aliens, but I love the theory of the civilization that existed before the last apocalypse was not a bunch of dummies. They were actually pretty fucking advanced. The cool thing towards the end of the documentary, as he goes through each of these and he's connecting all the stories, they were very big on astrophysics. Like they were big astronomer people. And there was the oldest thing that they had on the documentary, I forgot where it was, but the oldest piece that they have to date, the symbols and the stuff like that or whatever, it was predicting the timing of apocalypse. So he was like, I don't think it's a coincidence that these advanced civilizations were all in tune, very much in tune with astronomy. And they were talking about, like, pretty much one of the pieces showed, like, on the X amount of sunrise. Because if you think about it, if that dates back before the ancient apocalypse, they were living before and could see it coming. Right? And pretty much predicting, like, we are on a cycle. We're on a consistent cycle on this earth. Like, there is every X amount of time when the sun does this, boom, ice age. And then when the sun does this for a while, boom, opposite of ice age. But you got all this ice, boom, great flood. Shit like that, where they're kind of like, he feels like that some of those people had a grip.
My only thing would be, what else did they leave on this earth? They would have people were to leave, so that basically they would have to pack up everything and take everything with them, but like the fucking pyramids.
No, they died. So that's the thing.
So where the fuck are their skeletons?
So think about this. The only skeletons and artifacts that we can recover today is post-apocalypse. Like post the Great Cataclysm or whatever.
Exactly.
But these megaliths, these big structures, and that's his theory too, is they built these because they felt like this was the only thing that could make it through the apocalypse. Because if you think about, we can barely recover things that were, tens, thousands of years ago, like as far as like tools and like bones and shit like that. You go further in time and you add, they didn't just die from natural causes. It was an apocalyptic fucking world restructure type thing. It kind of lets you it kind of gives you an understanding of maybe like why we can't find, just because we can't find it through not historians but the fossil people, what are they called, whatever, archaeology. Just because archaeology can't find it, does that mean it never existed, right? And it's like, what are these big megaliths?
What I was getting at though is, what if they never died? What if they just left?
Could be.
What if they just said, okay, something crazy is gonna happen, we need to get off of here, and then they packed up everything and they just left?
And some of them stayed.
No, or maybe they didn't stay. Maybe they just left, but they just left. Fucking, who's going to carry that big ass pyramid?
Of course, nobody. It's too huge.
Well, I'm sure they left, but it's like not all of them survived. Because there's some correlation to every structure built after the cataclysm was never as precise as the one before, which is weird. That's like against our train of thought, where it's like we've developed over time. It's like, no, we were developed to a point. Cataclysm happens, and we've been.
What was that time frame from when it happened?
So cataclysm happened at 10,000 BC.
And when was the next structure built, roughly?
So then they had like some at 9,000 BC.
So 1,000 years went by.
Right. So like that civilization that did survive they could have dwindled out. And that's the thing. You're kind of resetting like civilization as a whole, and they could probably only teach what they can. And it is funny because there's a thing psychologically where we hold these stories in our mind, and it's like, is that religion a little bit, right? Like these stories that we have that we keep trying to pass on, why are they all so similar? But they're just kind of switched based off the geographical area. Maybe because there's some truth there. I'm not saying like detailed truth in religion or whatever the case. I'm just saying like, what if on different continents of the world, there was that type of civilization that existed that made it, and each of these continents has experienced, not an encounter, but that integration of that old civilization trying to pass off what they can.
Yeah.
With this new civilization that's kind of like growing and growing and growing and growing, So the other part was they found some things, some crazy megaliths buried. That's part of that fuels that theory of that they were trying to make this last through the cataclysm. And if they kind of felt like that they could predict that cycle of the world, then they would try to hide, so they buried a lot of these, like intentionally. Like, I forgot how they found it out, but like the dirt, they can age dirt. Scientists can age dirt. And the dirt on top of it was the same age as the dirt below it, which makes them believe that it was buried.
Or maybe like some type of supernatural, like phenomenon. Mother Nature happened.
Yeah. Could be it right there. Could be it. So, and then the other interesting thing, and that gets me to this post that triggered this conversation, but in that documentary, he talked about So you know, you go through like 6 episodes of looking at these pyramids and these big megaliths and like how the fuck were they built, and then they got these scientists that and people that live there that study it that are like, thank you for coming, because like nobody's listening to us. Like that's not how this happened. Like, you know how you go to a place and then they're like, yeah, that's what you learned. That's funny because that's not what happened here. You know, like they're all like that and they're all scientists and shit. But at the end of it, there's this place in China where there's all these big ass, and mind you, like the Sphinx we dug up, right?
Yeah.
They call it excavate, right? There's this part of China that has these big ass pyramid shaped hills, and they have this radar where they can see that there's shit underneath.
Underground, yeah.
China will not let people excavate it.
No.
Right? So I saw this post. Let me see. I don't know if it was China. No, it's not China. Nope, that's not it.
I heard about that too, though.
Like, yeah, they're not letting people excavate it. And it's like, what the fuck? Drain the time. Scientists discover. So then I saw this post, and that's what triggered me. I'm like, this shit, we're going to keep learning more and more. That's why I went that direction. It's like, if you're going to study some shit, let's, like, keep discovering.
Yeah.
You know? Scientists discover 417 ancient cities in Guatemala, which Guatemala has one of the oldest structures as well. In Guatemala, connected by super highways. And it's like, here, Guatemala joint scientists have unearthed a network of 417 ancient mine cities.
But they excavated that, though.
To 1000 BC, right?
Yeah.
So this isn't even, this is post cataclysm. Using LiDAR, that's how they can see underneath the dirt or whatever. They've also identified nearly 110 miles of superhighways, redefining our understanding of the Maya as a sophisticated and advanced civilization. This could potentially be as significant as discovering pyramids in Egypt.
Yeah.
So it's like they're finding this crazy shit around the world, you know? And is it weird? There was also around the world, similar building pyramids, whatever, they all had something. Their arrangement had some space, not space. What the fuck was I gonna? Astronomical direction. Like there was some astronomical meaning to it too. Like they would face this star at this. Like they all did that around the world, and it's kind of like, I don't know, man. I think we talked about a bunch of stupid shit for sure. But there's something within the truth, right? Like within this stupid shit, right? Like, I don't know.
Of course, but we'll never know. We'll never see in our lifetime.
You, me, no one's ever going to know. It's one of those things that it's going to always be a big old mystery, bro.
Are you okay with knowing that what we've known to today is not true, though?
Yeah. I never believed the whole concept of...
Like, is that okay not knowing?
Well, did you ever really believe
I didn't believe it to begin with.
Yeah.
Did you believe it?
Elephants are bringing this shit up the hills, and it made no sense to me. But I'm not going to fight it either, because... I don't have enough research to fight.
It's one of those
me and Jordan had this conversation 5 years ago how bullshit all that stuff is, because it doesn't make sense. If you've done any type of construction or if you've worked in anything like that, to be that specific with that heavy of stuff is just not like a
dumbos.
No, it's not. Doesn't fucking just happen. No. And I didn't believe that shit from the jump. But it's just
you're not gonna go out your time fighting it, because it's like, for what? I can't tell you the other reasoning, but I just know this ain't it. But it's one of those you just kind of say, hey, I'm never going to fucking know. So
unless they fucking undig some fucking from fucking 25-foot fucking skeleton underneath the fucking all that shit.
Then it makes sense.
Yeah, but until then, it doesn't make sense.
But the cool thing I think is like, okay, if you don't believe it, then you think it's aliens, right? But the cool thing with these theories is, no, it was us, right? Like it was human civilization.
Yeah.
And we are at the latest end of the last civilization. That doesn't mean that there hasn't been cycles of different civilizations, because we're talking about tens of thousands of years. And I think it's really cool to think. Some people might not like that though, because why? Because that means we're inevitably seeing a cataclysm, right? Like that's what scientists say will happen.
Life is bound to cycle. I mean, shit. You're taught about that in the fucking Bible, the rapture.
Yeah,
the Bible literally talks about the fucking rapture. How any fucking day, nobody knows fucking when God's gonna come to earth and take everybody.
So
you either go to heaven or you go to hell.
And similar to this episode, while there's a bunch of like very invalid shit in the Bible and a lot of other religions, there's truth.
Yeah.
In it.
And what if the reason why nobody has any fucking type of skeleton remains from pre-cataclysm is because what if it was a rapture?
Right.
And what if everything goes?
There's a lot of things we're never going to be able to answer.
And that's why I said we're not meant to know the truth to everything.
Yeah.
And if we were meant to know the truth to everything, we would be told the truth to everything. We would have all the information to do it. And if you're a religious person, I don't know if you're listening or not. If you are, but even God says you're not meant to know everything.
Right.
There's a system, because if you know everything, there's no belief.
Yeah, there's faith.
Faith. That's what I meant. There's no faith.
The only thing with that, like, and that's the thing, like, I feel like I'm spiritual, not religious, so it's like I have a hard time attaching myself to like those stories, just because like I've seen, you know, family members and stuff think that some people are going to hell because they don't believe in God or whatever, and I'm like, you know, you got Islam, you got Buddhism, Hinduism.
I've actually said it in the podcast too before, but I have a really weird, like, I say I'm Christian and I pray like as a Christian. I do everything as a Christian, but I have a different way. I just don't. I think that everybody, I think Jesus or God or however you want to word it, came to everybody differently as to what they felt like they needed to see and as to what they felt like they needed to accept.
Yeah,
to accept God. I think God came to them as that image, and I think that none of us are wrong. I think God is so powerful that God came to us in different ways and with different people based off of what we needed,
and we added our own shit to it.
Yeah, so I think that Buddhism and everybody is the same God. I just think that it's just different. But I think where the problem comes in is if you truly believe there's nothing higher power.
Right.
So I think that if you accept anything other than like anything else that has like that sense of it, then I think that you're good.
Which is weird though, because also like I hate that all the people that do research on evolution and these cataclysms and shit, they're all atheists because it all makes sense to them. Mm-hmm. And it's like, fuck you. But you can't change. You could pivot your. That's the problem, is people don't pivot their stance on religion. Like they're stuck.
It's adamant. That's it. It's
like if it's not like if you think this ain't true, then like nothing. Like,
that's always true though, because I know pastors that have changed their stance and have changed their mind.
For sure.
Everybody,
majority though.
Oh yeah, vast majority.
They will shut down anything about that because you're trying to disprove one thing. That means you're disproving everything. It's like, no, not everything. It's like, if anything, this is showing the consistency around the world.
Yeah,
where everybody had their own prophet, and how that happened doesn't matter. And you know what I mean? Like, let's call it the ancient civilization was each of these people's prophets. That doesn't mean it wasn't a higher power kind of controlling that cycle. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. Like, I don't know. It's interesting.
I agree.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's our conspiracy.
That's our rant
pyramid episode.
Yep.
Frequency.
This was a sandwich episode.
Stay tuned next week. We got a fire episode for you guys dropping next week. So if you guys made it all the way through this one, definitely stay tuned. We got a really, really cool guest for next week for you guys.
Oh my god!
Yeah, we're gonna put the documents I was talking about down in the description.
Yeah,
the
send
CIA
that link
thing if you want to read it.
We say that, but we'll see if Jacob actually sends it for me.
I already sent it.
Okay, so
he'll comment if you don't put it.
So,
anyways, thank you guys for listening so much. We love you guys.
Love y'all. Pocket watch out.
Pocket watch out. One love.